I'm 78 years old, and most of the people who once filled my days are gone now. Some passed quietly. Some drifted away so slowly I didn't notice until there was nothing left to drift. And only recently did I understand what actually mattered, when there was no one left to impress, disappoint, or postpone. I'm not telling this because I want forgiveness or praise. I don't think either one is coming. I'm telling it because time has narrowed my world down to a few rooms, a few memories, and a long stretch of quiet. In that quiet, certain truths stop arguing with you. They just sit there. These days, my mornings are slow. I wake up before the sun, mostly because my body doesn't let me sleep much longer. I sit on the edge of the bed for a while, waiting for my joints to remember how to move. The house is quiet in a way it never used to be. No footsteps, no voices from another room, just the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of my own breathing. I make coffee for one. That still feels strange to say, even after all these years. When you're young, you think solitude is something you can turn on and off. You think being alone is a choice you can reverse later. I used to enjoy the quiet. Now it feels different. It feels final. I spend a lot of time looking back, not because I want to relive things, but because memories surface on their own when there's nothing distracting them. A comment I brushed off, a promise I meant to keep later, a phone call I didn't return because I was tired, or busy, or convinced there would be another chance. There usually wasn't. When I was younger, I didn't think of myself as someone who ignored what mattered. I thought I was responsible, reliable, someone who showed up. I had a job that demanded long hours and attention, and I took pride in that. I told myself I was doing what needed to be done. I believed that providing was the same as being present. That belief carried me for decades. In my 20s and 30s, life felt like a series of things that needed to be handled. Bills, deadlines, repairs, plans. There was always something just ahead that required focus. I told myself I would slow down once things were stable, once the promotion came through, once the kids were older, once the house was paid off. There was always a next condition. I remember coming home late most nights. The house would already be dim, dinner plates stacked in the sink. I'd lower my voice when I spoke, assuming everyone was asleep. Sometimes they were. Sometimes they weren't, but they'd learn not to wait. I didn't see that as a loss at the time. I saw it as efficiency. Weekends were for errands and catching up. I'd promised myself I'd be more present the following week. I meant it. I always meant it. But intention is quiet, and habit is loud. Years passed without ceremony. Birthdays became quicker, conversations shorter. The children stopped asking me to come to things. My wife stopped reminding me. I didn't ask why. I assumed it was normal. I assumed this was how life unfolded for everyone. Looking back, that assumption did a lot of damage. The truth is, nothing dramatic happened. No big argument. No clear moment where everything broke. What broke did so in pieces small enough to ignore. Missed dinners, half-listened conversations, a tired note instead of a real response. I thought love was durable enough to survive neglect. Some things are. People aren't. I remember one evening clearly. I'd come home later than usual. The house was dark. My wife was sitting at the kitchen table, not crying, not angry, just quiet. She said she felt like she was living with someone who was always leaving. I laughed it off. I said she was exaggerating. I told her things would slow down soon. They didn't. I told myself I was building something for the future. I didn't notice I was trading the present away, piece by piece, for a future that never quite arrived the way I imagined. By the time I started to feel the distance, it already had momentum. Relationships don't collapse all at once. They thin, they stretch, they lose warmth. And then one day, you realize you're talking to someone who no longer expects to be heard. That's a hard thing to admit. The turning point didn't feel like clarity at first. It felt like inconvenience. My wife got sick. Not suddenly, gradually. Appointments, medications, adjustments. I told myself I'd make time now. I did, but it felt rushed, squeezed between obligations I still hadn't let go of. I thought I was adapting. I was still delaying. When she passed, the house didn't just become quiet. It became hollow. The routines we'd shared disappeared overnight. No more checking in. No more small updates about the day. No more background presence. Grief didn't arrive as a dramatic wave. It arrived as confusion, as reaching for someone who wasn't there, as realizing I'd saved all my attention for later, and later had ended. After that, time behaved differently. Days felt long, years felt short. The children called, but not often. They had lives built elsewhere. I couldn't fault them for that. I taught them, without meaning to, that distance was normal. I tried to fill the hours, volunteered, took walks, watched television I barely followed, but none of it replaced what I'd lost, and none of it touched the question that kept returning. What did I think mattered? I used to believe success would leave something behind, that being dependable, productive, respected would somehow translate into being remembered deeply. It doesn't work that way. People remember how you made them feel when you were there, not what you were busy accomplishing elsewhere. I learned that too late. There are things now that cannot be fixed, conversations that can't happen, apologies that no longer have an audience, presence that can't be retroactively supplied. Time doesn't negotiate. It doesn't accept explanations. I've made peace with that, mostly. Peace doesn't mean comfort. It just means you stop arguing with what is. If you're listening to this, I'm not asking you to change your life overnight. I don't believe in sudden transformations. I'm only telling you what surprised me most at the end. What mattered wasn't how hard I worked, or how responsible I was, or how much I carried. What mattered was who I noticed, who I listened to when it was inconvenient, who I made time for when there was always something else pressing. I assumed the people in my life would always be there, adapting around my absence. They weren't. They were living their own days, feeling their own loneliness, drawing their own conclusions. No one warns you that neglect doesn't feel cruel when you're doing it. It feels practical, reasonable, temporary. Now, at 78, I live with a quiet gratitude for what I had, and a quiet sorrow for how casually I treated it. Those two feelings sit side by side. Neither cancels the other out. I don't have many years left. I know that. I don't say it dramatically. It's just a fact. I spend the time I have paying closer attention than I ever did before. It helps, but it doesn't erase what's gone. If this meant something to you, if any of it felt familiar, I hope you sit with it for a moment. Not to feel guilty, just to notice who's still there. That's all I wanted to say. The rest is already decided.